also is a street fighter. We're often on the front lines together. And let me commend the work of this organization. Lord knows we need to do something about our economics. That's why we need a Black Chamber of Commerce. And I was also heartened to hear the conversation about us allying and building alliances with the continent, because we are all one people. More on that in a moment in the context of reparations. I want to give my brother here his kudos. Frequently lately, I'm asked to appear on MSNBC, but I remember the first person I saw on MSNBC, and that was his brother right here. Woo! And, you know, at some point, we need to have serious conversations about supporting the Eds and the Rolands and the yours trulies when it comes to us building our own media and our own institutions that we control to tell our story, because the landscape is changing and a lot of us are just really literally being pushed out. So the challenge is upon us to do that. Having said that, Ed is exactly right. Presidential candidates talk a lot about this. What is going on is that Sheila Jackson Lee has picked up the baton from John Conyers. The Conyers bill, originally introduced in '87, which would have established a commission to study the feasibility of reparations. Well, that's changed. We now have HR 42.0. It's no longer a question about whether there should be. This bill says there should be, but instead a commission will study what form it will take. And so that's timely. So many of the candidates have endorsed HR 40, which is, very, very wise for them to do. We had to move some of them along. I won't call one out by name, but he was like, I'm not for reparations. And I said, we're not calling by name though. I said, but we cool. I said, man, come here, let me talk to you for a minute. I said, because he got caught up in what form. And we'll get into more of that later, because there's a lot of debate in social media that Greg and I have been involved in. And I said, you realize this is to study what form it'll take, because it's complex. He said, well, if we're going to study the form, that's okay, I'm for it then. So then he came out for HR 40. We have to be interested in this issue. Last thing I'll say in this brief moment as we open. Because our enemies are more interested in it today than we are. As we all know, the issue is the ebbed and flowed. It's largely been an academic discussion. We've talked about reparations a great deal in academia, even more so than in the street in terms of demonstrations. It's been an intellectual debate. Our enemies have seized upon that and quite bluntly are planning to use it to divide us next year. So we are being targeted again as a Black community on social media. So be alert for that. When you see posts talking about reparations and saying, hey, Black folk, if you don't get your individual check by 2020, stay home and don't vote, then you know that's not from those of us who have history in the reparations movement. And we'll get more into that later. But the good news is out there, the bill is out there. The Speaker of the House supports it. She's on the record, which means it'll be scheduled, it'll be for a vote, and then there will be a commission to talk about individual checks, business investment. I serve on the National African American Reparations Commission, and Ron, there's a 10-point program that not only talks about individual checks, that's fine, but investment in infrastructure for our people, the same way they got Homestead, the same way they got the fair housing loans, the same way they got the GI Bill. That's why we're behind, and that's what reparations at this hour is all about.
Greg, pick up on that. And Mark mentions Ron. We should know Ron Daniels, who's really been on the front lines of this movement for decades now, quite frankly. He was so in front of everything. He would talk about it when we weren't ready to talk about it. We was all like, yeah, okay, Negro, whatever, man. And then we started to really listen to what he was talking about, and talking about the redress, as you just mentioned, Mark, that others have received that we have yet to receive. Don't we have to stop being emotional about it and being more tactical about it?
Well, the answer, of course, is yes. I think we have to do both. And I want to echo my dear friend and brother, many years years in the struggle, Rep. Thompson, Brother Mark, Brother Monsamela, I want to echo and say, Ed, beyond the white sphere, public sphere, it was you at BET every night that we watched in Nashville.
That's right.
You know, and so I want to echo what you said. We have to have these black platforms. And Brother, I appreciate you, man, for everything coming in here. The black community is tiny, so a lot of people don't know and see. I walked out and saw my friend and brother, one of my heroes, the great Paul Coates, standing out there.
That's right.
What's Paul doing out here, man? So when you mention Robert Mugabe, I think that really almost touches the third rail of this. And I wouldn't be sitting here finally if not for my sister Ajwa Osman, who brought us here. And so I'm grateful for that. Your Ghanaian homegirl, I see you already connected. She don't play at all. So yeah, the emotion is there, Ed, and I think it has to be there. But it has to be informed by this strategic practice. Coming in, you know, came to registration, Ajman, I came in, saw Sister Stephanie, and the first brochure I saw was a brochure for Port Royal and the Gullah Islands and all this. How ironic is that? This is probably the most important forum to have this conversation about strategic thinking connected with spirit and emotion around this question of reparations. Why? It's in the name of this organization. We're here because of commerce. It was the thingification of African people, the literal trade in black bodies that built the foundation for the last 500 years in the modern world system. Reparations isn't old. Reparations is the conduit through which we will decide whether there's going to be a global community or not. This isn't an American conversation. All continental Africans know, for example, right now there are about 500 million people in the European Union. There are about 1.25 billion people. I'm sorry, they're 500 million in the European Union. There are about 1.25 billion in Africa. 40% of those people are under 15 years old. By the middle part of this century, they're saying that there will be over 2 billion people in Africa and less than 500 million in Europe, meaning the birth rate is going down. They're talking about the Africans displacing the Europeans very soon. And what does that have to do with this domestic conversation at HR 40 now? The white world is terrified now. That's why you see the open fascism in Europe. That's why you see Bolsonaro in Brazil. That's why you see Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a symptom of something that is impending that can't be evaded and avoided, and that is ultimately the demographic restructuring of the world system. This reparations conversation that we know has been going on for decades, since really the 19th century, and that's why I said the Port Royal, the brochure about the Gullah Islands struck me because those Africans in the Sea Islands were the ones who got Rufus Sexton's special order that began to get 40 acres and a mule. And then they sent General Oliver Otis Howard out to tell them they couldn't have it because the federal government turned the land back over to the old Confederates and to land speculators. Mark Sanford, who was in the United States Congress, Mark Sanford, who's want to come back into the DC Capitol. His family bought land in that area. That's how he ends up down there becoming a landowner. This is what I'm saying in this context of this reparations demand. But my point is that the emotion that we have, because we were wronged, we were harmed, we are harmed, has to now be connected to an intellectual architecture, a legal strategy that transcends the United States. And as we talk about commerce, we have to understand finally that there is one base that has allowed our reparations claims, our long reparations claims over a century and a half really, to find some basis that can't be displaced, and that is independent black institutions. That's right. Once we establish our institutions, we have a base out of which to make demands that isn't reliant on the people we making demands of to make the demands. That's why this organization is, I don't know if there's a more important place to have this conversation than with the people who are engaged in the thing that has us speaking English in the first place, which is commerce. Come on, Greg. But anyway, I'll stop here.
Mark, pick up on, if you will, the idea of being supportive of those who are on the front lines. Often we all meet with our folks on the front line, and what I hear from Congress folks is they don't take me seriously enough on the Hill because they know I don't have the backing that I need publicly. When I make a stand, they say, just wait it out for a couple of days, we'll be okay. Talk about our responsibility to back these folks.
Well, and that, you know, even extends beyond reparations. Elijah Cummings told me, we had a conversation maybe 15, 20 years ago about, and that's changing finally, about who financially supports Congressional Black Caucus in terms of contributions. And it's rarely ever the CBC's actual constituency, because the constituency they serve often doesn't have the money and the resources to make big political contributions. Now that's 15, 20 years ago. Things have changed. People are more interested now in small individual donors. So you now have more of a voice as someone who can give $5, $10, $20. But that wasn't always the case. But I think that's shifting as more and more African Americans are getting involved, and we are building finally some black political action committees. Lord knows the difference a collective PAC has made. Stephanie and Quentin are incredible. So that's one means of frontline support. But I think too, what HR 40 does, it gives us all a way to actually engage in the process of something that we all agree with. I don't think there's a single black person that says, I disagree with reparations. Right now, the debate will just have to be, what form it will take. And we may not disagree on that. You mentioned Dr. Daniels, who formed the National African Americans Reparations Commission, is the convener, along with NCOBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, which over 30 years ago was formed under the auspices of the National Conference of Black Lawyers. Again, these are black institutions. Dr. Carr mentioned the international aspect. So we take an example from what other black folk are doing around the world in what Dr. Clark would call the African world or the Pan-African world. What's happening in the Caribbean, what's happening on the continent, going after the former European powers for colonialism, because frankly, colonialism is slavery and slavery is colonialism. We've all had the same experiences. So we take a page from that, and then you have a Pan-African struggle. Actually, the very same people saying who've infiltrated the movement and are trying to use it to divide us are also the same ones who knock Pan-Africanism. I'm not a Pan-Africanist. Folk went crazy because I wore one of my Mandela Madiba shirts, same color as Paul's right there, on MSNBC. They lost their minds. He can't wear that shirt. These are black folk. The white folk loved it. They're like, man, we never seen anybody do something like that. But we have to be clear and involved in this issue, because if our enemy is taking it seriously, we ought to take it even more seriously. One thing I want to do, though, is to kind of speak directly to this organization, if I could. In the 10-point program that the NARC, or the National African American Reparations Commission, has, in one of the points, it directly addresses, I think, some of the work that's done here. Now, just to delineate, that's a commission we have from within our community. The law would set up a federal commission that would consist of entrepreneurial development. Now, I'll give everybody the website for this in a minute, but just to highlight some points: funds to develop an infrastructure of strategic, financial, commercial, industrial, agricultural, and technology-oriented business economic enterprises for the benefit of Black America as a whole. These enterprises would be managed by boards of trustees appointed by the National Reparations Trust Authority. We'd even have a trust authority. Establishment of a Black business development bank.
Wow. To
provide grants and loans to socially responsible for-profit entrepreneurships, economic ventures dedicated to building the Black community, utilizing just labor policies and sustainable environmental practices. You all can see that at ibw21.org/NARC, NAARC, IBW21, that's for Institute of Black World, ibw21.org/NAARC. You'll just see me after, but I just want to let you know that's the level of conversation that's more in depth than just give me a check. We were hearing. Sister said, man, I can't wait to get my check because I'm going to go buy me some new red bottoms. And I said, okay. But that's your right. Right. But we also need, they didn't get checks, just checks. They got agricultural machinery. Right. Y'all see that video where Dr. King says, we're going to get our check? That's what he was talking about. They got infrastructure, and that's what we need too.
Right. Dr. Carr, to pick up on what Mark said, but one of the other things I want to make sure that we address is the idea of being ready if we get to the precipice of stepping over that line. Absolutely. Because we can fall and trip over ourselves if we're not ready.
Especially if we're being pushed.
Yes.
Did you all see that New York Times issue this past weekend, the 1619 Project?
Right.
Some very brilliant scholars who are being pushed into a ditch by a system that knows that some form of reparation is inevitable. So the fight now is to change and to frame the narrative, to frame how we think about this. We certainly built this country. I think about what Michelle Obama said at the Democratic National Convention. I go to sleep at night and I wake up in a house that was built by slaves. And of course I wince because I ask myself, what would those who built the White House think about you taking pride in the fact that they built it? Because in 1814, they showed how the British had to burn it down. Yeah. There's a delicate balance. I think H.R. 40 will ultimately pass, and I think that if Donald Trump was smart, he'd sign it. Why? Because on that commitment, white supremacy is, it doesn't ever quite, it assumes that all black people think alike, and we know that's not true. But what it doesn't know, because it still thingifies us, you know, we're still a thing in this system. It doesn't understand that even for all our diversity, there's so many intersections and laps that if our notion of organizing has to connect those things deliberately now, so that we all have a role to play. I'm saying all that as prelude to this as we think about this question. This commission can get out in front of reparations by dictating the terms by which they will be delivered. Entrepreneurship is important, but individual success is not how our people advance.
Yes.
Individuals they had Negroes in slavery who negotiated for a little room to operate. I mean, this is not a new thing. We have to think now about how we can infuse our own distinct and independent institutions with authority. The reparations struggle that we hear, Reverend Thompson talk about, our brother talk about, the one in this country that began in some ways with the National Ex-Slave Mutual Pension Fund and Relief Fund, Callie House, Isaiah Dickerson. This is the 1880s, 90s. The federal government put them in jail.
Right, sure did.
Dickerson's father was one of the people who was on Jefferson Davis's brother's plantation in Mississippi. This Jefferson, the brother of the President of the Confederacy, left his plantation in Mississippi during the Civil War, turned it over to the Africans who had been enslaved, and they began to run the plantation and make land. 1,200 freshmen, how we're reading this. I got a 12 o'clock class. I'm gonna be over there helping go through this thing. In other words, because well, I'm saying, I'd say this. In the 20th century, the Garvey movement, so forth, by the time you get to Cobra in the late 1980s and into the 90s, you have had the Republic of New Africa make a land claim in this country that's based on independent ownership. It isn't exclusively black. For example, in Mississippi right now, Chokwe Lumumba's son, Antar, and his daughter, Rakia, are part of something called Jackson Rising. Doesn't matter the color of your skin, it's about collective empowerment. Entrepreneurship in this country has always been targeted as individuals, become rich. That's not how we're gonna move as a collective. That economic empowerment has to be dictated with a philosophy that says we must all advance. We must all advance, because capitalism is premised on the notion of competition and often the other person. Our movements in this country, including commerce, have always been anchored in collective advancement. And that's where this thing is going to clash, which is why I think H.R. 40 will ultimately pass. I think that the most conservative business interests in this country, who are always in dialogue with the business interests of other places, that's why Haiti has never been able to get off, because these people have an international finance capital system where they ain't never gonna let a Robert Mugabe talk too much. They ain't never gonna let a Jean-Bertrand Aristide talk too much. They ain't never gonna let a Lula da Silva in Brazil talk too much. They're gonna encourage all of them to stay within their traditional country lines and pick a few people out of their representative groups to manage the rest of them by saying, look, Jay-Z, you could be a billionaire too. No, that ain't the point. The point of reparations is collective advancement, and part of it is premised on the idea that whatever y'all do, we're going to build something that you have no control over, and that's the thing that frightens folks in this reparations movement, the idea that there will be a space that we don't control. So pay very close attention to the concessions, because they are not concessions. They're investments in shaping the dialogue so that you never turn your back on the promise of something that was never real in the first place. This notion of a United States, which is going to fall apart. Please mark my words on that. The United States will not be here as long as it has been here so far. States' rights is going to become a conversation about preserving spaces where humanity is more, not less, honored. That's why California is saying Donald Trump can't be on the ballot until he releases his tax returns. And they go to court, they're going to say it's a states' rights argument. George Wallace was making it 50 years ago. It's going to be the progressives now. And then we're going to have to make a decision. Do we believe in America so much that we're going to sacrifice another generation of people in a fantasy when everybody else is going for themselves? This reparations conversation, they're going to concede, because they're going to try to keep this project going. Trust me on that. And they're going to come to commerce first. and say to the rest of the people, just be like them, work hard. Nah, that's the trick.
And what I've encouraged us to do as people is just become educated about it.
Right.
That's what we talked about. You don't have to about what's been put forth, what groups are there. They've just made a decision, typically middle-class black folk.
Yes.
And I count myself as one of them in terms of the dollar amount, but not the mentality.
Right.
That's what we have to start dealing with. Go ahead, pick up, and let me just say this. We're going to take questions now. You just raise your hand. I'll come to you. We'll go.
Well, and that's important too. Let me just say, because we have talked about money, but just to segue on that, we also have to change what we hear psychosomatic when we say reparations. We all think about money in that regard, but the root word of reparations is repair. So a lot of this has to include our own repair. And that's not to say that won't cost money, but access to resources to deal with the long-term transgenerational post-traumatic slave syndrome exposure that we all have experienced, and a lot of us middle-class folks don't like to admit it. I'm all right. But that's what it is alluding to.
That's right.
We can't come together. The Black Chamber of Commerce together this business. Am I right?
Exactly.
Deep down, you know, we that's how we do. But that is because of what has been psychologically put in. This was a psychological game as much as a money game. So I think it's important that thought leaders like those in this room, even in business, think about reparations in the context of not just money repair, but total repair. Because we need to be able to work together. And the only way we do that is if we prepare ourselves. There's something in us that still prevents us from working together collectively as a people because of the plantation experience, the divide and conquer, the crab in a barrel. All of that is a result of the psychological impact of slavery.
Question here.
Good morning. I'm Gerald Gibbons, president of the Raleigh NAACP.
Yes, sir.
Ed last night was talking to us about the loss of a sense of family in the black community. I called my grandmother last night and talked to her about this reparation conversation we were going to have. My grandmother told me in 1940 she lived in a house that was valued at $10. 1971, they bought their first home at $20,000. Now it's 2019, that home is valued at $65,000. But the white area where the homes where she couldn't buy a house, they're all valued at over $350,000. Tell us how important it is for us to identify how racism impacted our own families.
Well, let me say this very quickly. 2014, this reparations conversation has always been one we've been having. In 2014, it was publicly faced in this country in a way, in a large measure, as the objective.
Yeah.
We've always looked at our community as the objective and other black communities as models. That's why you see these little Hades in North Carolina. That's why you see the black towns in Oklahoma. We talk about Black Wall Street. Those Negroes came out there because the territory, it wasn't even a state. We just want a place to be left alone. When you look at the early reparations movement, we talk about the loss of the family values. Those family values were not lost during enslavement. Immediately after enslavement, as Africans made land claims, it was the integrity of the black family that allowed them to sustain those claims. I'm saying all this as prelude to answer your question. So when Ta-Nehisi is writing about how it was a strategic decision of white business in partnership with the political and legal apparatus to devalue black property, it was so that those aspirations could be contained and then managed for a future generation. You devalue the property until you can take it from the people. If you can't take it through the law, you send the Klan out there. If you can't take it through the law and the Klan, you send a tax assessor out there. But we have to understand, as Ed said, this is a systemic issue. Yeah. This isn't just individuals acting out of racial prejudice. So finally, in Raleigh, anywhere else, Nashville, where I'm from, where my mother, we got to fight now. They send something, she's 91 years old. They tack stuff on her dirt every 2 days. When I go down there and be like, y'all can write paper until it all evaporates and its children's children come. You will never have this property. But the point is that we have to now understand that what we're doing now has a precedent in the past. And we have to look backward to see what worked then in order to move forward. Not throw in with people who always look backward to move forward. Meaning that It's about land ownership, which means property ownership, but in terms of commerce, it means investment. If we got little banks, we got to have those banks make loans to people to be able to purchase property. In the international sense, I'm so glad you said that about the 6th region. I know it's still being worked out. But if we can't find finance in the United States, we need transnational finance. And the minute they say you can't do that, you say that's what you do every day.
That's right.
So in other words, but we can't link our freedom dreams to this nation state. As long as we do that, this story is going to be played over, and we have to think now we are a people that are connected globally, and we have to act like it. Otherwise, we are always going to be subject to the whims of a nation state that can only be sustained as long as it keeps us looking at it and not the world. That's how you save Durham, brother. You connect it to the world, and that has very specific implications for people who are engaged in commerce. That's business. That's how we help your grandmother.
Woo!
Question to Dr. Carr and Dr. Thompson. As far as reparations is concerned, how does it affect the free enterprise system in America?
How does it affect the
Free enterprise system.
That's all I've been talking about, brother.
It's really, I mean, it's, yeah.
Capitalism is built on the premise, understand, philosophically, capitalism is based on the premise of individual rights. That philosophical concept in Western society is the most deeply flawed element of this most recent thing they call Western civilization.
Right.
The idea that individuals are somehow at the center of the way we should look at our social contract. So then everything becomes a negotiation. Marriage becomes a negotiation. Education becomes a negotiation. Go to school, get a good job, and that's how you advance. We can never achieve as a group if we take the okie doke that education is the way for us to get free as a group. That only helps individuals. Free enterprise, capitalism at its heart, is a predatory practice.
It is.
Now, at the same time, that doesn't mean we don't do business. That means we do business from a different philosophical mindset. And I'm not saying I'm not saying we dream about it. I'm saying we look back at how we did it before. Look at the black business. Look at North Carolina Mutual. Look at the Nation of Islam that owned thousands of acres of land in the South and then put those in the restaurant. Look at the businesses. Look at the black press. We're talking about the black press. Claude Barnett. Look at the Chicago Defender, the Pittsburgh Courier. These are businesses. Look at the Negro Leagues, Rube Foster. This was a business. And every time we've made a business claim, that's when the capitalist system got nervous. Because it wasn't a business claim based on us making money alone. It was a business claim based on us improving the lives of the people in our communities. Jim Crow held us together on that. But the minute Jim Crow was lifted, as you say, Ed, that tiny black middle class was recruited over to another mindset. And now we mistake individual advancement for collective advancement, and that is a direct result of finance, capital, and capitalism. And that's the mentality we have to change, and then we take our money and move together, and that's when all of the businesses explode. The white man's ice can't be colder. Why? Because you're my grandchild. We all came from Africa, so therefore we're going to do business with each other, and then you come over. And what do we notice finally? Whenever we can read Frantz Fanon, the culture of North Africa is African, and they take that culture and it becomes the foundation for tourism and everything else. But what we don't do is understand that that has to be the foundation for how we do business as well. If we did that, you would have to turn away business. I promise you, we would have to turn away business because the business isn't based on making money. The business is based on culture. Once you base it on culture, we've answered the question of capitalism.
And what I would add to that is, there's this free enterprise, but there's a myth of individualism that really doesn't apply to our enemies. That's right. As I said, all the things they do, they did on behalf of their collective and as a collective. The white economy, which they continue to do.
And continue to.
They look out for each other.
That's right.
They're all working together.
Even to a point, forgive my interruption, even to a point that you see Donald Trump's base seeing him as the beacon for their survival. That's right.
That's right.
But if ever you wanted to see this all-in collective, yes, there's a picture.
But here's the risk, and this is the history of white America. We'll see if this sustains next year. We probably about getting ready to go into a recession. So that's why he's running around saying, I'm going to hold the tariffs. I'm going to do a personal tax cut. Because they know. Now, he's never running in his business as well. So, when that happens, what do white voters do? They say, wait a minute, let me take this hood off for a minute, because now I'm about to lose my money. Don't they?
That's right.
Now, I'm not promising they're gonna do that this time because he got them so worked up in the hood piece. Everybody's just, gone berserk with the whole Ku Klux Klan piece. But that might happen again. But again, they're looking out. They're not talking about rugged individuals. They're talking about themselves as a collective. And as Greg said, the cure capitalism as a model. And see, that's where it kind of marries, quite frankly. Some of these candidates are not at all disingenuous once they understand the relationship. If candidates who are progressive want to talk about changing the structure of the economy, redistributing wealth,
yes,
that happens with reparations. What would it do for the economy if black folk had the same investment that white folk had that originally built the middle class in this country?
That's right.
That flipped this economy overnight, would it not?
Absolutely.
So anybody who's smart, even some white folks, if they really cared, or if they bothered to listen to Dr. King's speech, I recommend 1965 at the steps of Montgomery State Capitol, after the March for Selma Montgomery, the most important speech, not necessarily Lincoln Memorial, when he talked about black and white working class coming together after the Civil War.
That's right.
And systems being put in place to prevent that. Wait, that's too powerful.
Yeah.
So they created Jim Crow to feed it to poor white people a psychological burden that when they were starving from lower class wages, they could eat that bird and at least say, I'm better off than the black man.
That's
White folks on welfare today.
Yep.
See, the face of welfare is black. And they get a welfare check.
Right.
So psychology works both ways. Not only have we been psychologically damaged, you white, you've been psychologically damaged. If you look in the mirror, know you getting food stamps, but say yourself, only black folk get food stamps, something wrong with you. You in utter denial. And trust me, if you're in denial about that, you probably in denial about a whole lot of other things going on in your personal life too. This spouse really loves me, but they really don't. I'm handsome, but I'm really not. That kind of stuff. So denial is contagious. So in answer to your question, my brother, free enterprise and capitalism works best when it is addressing us within a collective. Now, when it's socialist or it's communism, those are no words, taboo words that they attack, but they do it for themselves.
Right.
It's so corporate America is socialist amongst itself. Their tax cuts, their bailouts, that's together. Socialism and communism mean coming together. That's what they do. They do it in a collective. We need to do the same damn thing.
That's right. Question back here.
Yes, about 10 years ago, I was a part of a delegation that went to Denmark from the Virgin Islands talking about reparations. Are we linking up with these other movements towards reparations?
Yes. As a matter of fact, of late, and let me see, I don't have all the information in front of me, and I don't even know if Greg knows about this, but the African Union is going to be convening some of, I think I'm correct about this, some of the worldwide reparations movements. And then hear from one brother who's really kind of become a world reparations ambassador. He teaches at the University of West Indies, Sir Hilary Beckles, who you really ought to interview. We need to hook y'all up because that needs to go internationally. He's kind of become a roving ambassador because he led and constructed what's happening in the Caribbean nations, because they suing the hell out of Europe.
That's right.
And Europe doesn't have no choice but to settle.
Check out his book, Britain's Black Debt.
Yeah, and so the African Union is going to be having him come and speak to delegates in D.C., I believe, sometime next month. I'll get the details and share it with Ron so it can be disseminated. Because again, frankly, we can't have a reparations movement without the Black Chamber. You all need to be involved in a lot of these discussions because, again, it's going to be about investment. That includes health. We need to invest in Howard Medical School, Meharry Medical College to keep them alive because they're struggling. We need more black doctors, more health professionals. All of that is important, all of this. And so, but I'll get that information to Ron and to Ed because everybody needs to be part of that.
Greg, I want you to speak to this issue, if you will. You talked about, Mark, broadening the idea of what reparations is and what it means to us. In my opinion, reparations may be the only way that we are going to make a dent in the wealth gap that we see in this country.
Absolutely.
And it is so almost insurmountable without that we will never catch up. Talk to us about what that can be for us as a collective.
Well, absolutely. Thank you. And again, referring to Paul's son, Ta-Nehisi, the testimony he gave before Congress back this summer. In about 5.5 minutes, he laid that out, talking about that wealth gap, 20-1, 16-1 Latino communities. And by the way, most Latinos are the Africans who speak Spanish. So this whole notion of immigration and nationalism, no, it's like, come on.
I'm not black, it's y'all.
Yeah, black.
You just got off the boat earlier than me.
You black in Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. So let's be clear. You come here and tell like you're not black. Now let's be. But this wealth gap, and Mark said it, Ed and everyone, the R word, redistribution. But like I said, the boogie person of communism, socialism. If you go back to 1951, when they were just beginning their so-called Red Scare, when Paul and Eslanda Robeson and Shirley and W.E.B. Du Bois and Louise Thompson Patterson, her husband William Patterson, a lawyer, took the United States to the United Nations in Geneva and New York with the petition called We Charge Genocide, which also had a reparations claim. We understand that the thing that has always made this country, and I agree with you, Martin, James Baldwin said, what is whiteness except the notion that I am not, thank heaven, you. So poor white people, that I ain't got nothing, but I ain't you. Whiteness is the thing they're gonna have to choose their whiteness or their life.
Yeah.
And so the point, and I'm tie this together. These reparations claims that lead to redistribution are ultimately the only way this country we call the United States of America might have a future. What do I mean by that? Look at the presidential debates right now. When you hear Elizabeth Warren saying we're going to tax this tiny fraction at the top and then use that for universal daycare, use that for free college, use that, they're giving away free stuff. Stop whiteness with no money who are going to choose whiteness over your life and listen for a minute. That redistribution is the only way you can close the wealth gap. But even talking about a wealth gap still ties to this free enterprise model, this capitalist model. Saying, so it's like Elijah Muhammad, you say, who are they to be equal to? In other words, are you trying to close a wealth gap, or are you trying to reconstruct a society where everyone can live to their human potential? Those are two different questions. Wealth has something to do with it, but if you listen, again, in the presidential debates, when you hear Warren, when you hear Sanders, when you hear some of the other candidates, particularly Warren I'm thinking about right now, talk about this redistribution. They're going to fight that like holy hell. But as long as we have the vote, I ain't saying the right to vote, because I don't know if there is a right to vote in the federal constitution if you read it very closely.
In their own culture,
but as long as we vote, we can put people and policymakers in place. And as Adwa always says, once you elect them, you got to make sure you hold their feet to the fire in terms of accountability. If we can get some redistribution, it's going to do two things finally. It's going to put a floor under those who have been oppressed in this country that will not just energize, but catalyze the national economy in ways that will yield trillions of dollars. Again, think about what will happen when people are employed, people have a stake in the ownership, and now that money is going back into the economy. So redistribution really opens up the economy. The second thing it does, it gives everyone in the economy, because it ain't going to be black people that benefit from this. It gives everyone in this nation state, finally, a stake and an investment in it. Right. Because frankly, for all this rhetoric, the New York Times magazine had to say, Crispus Attucks was the first to die in the American Revolution. Do you know that at least as many black people fought for the British as fought for George Washington, and in Virginia 30,000 ran away? We didn't give a damn who won the American Revolution. Y'all keep mistaking patriotism. We don't give a damn about this place. The only reason we say we give a damn is because we want you out of our room while we had this conversation. But if we were being honest, we have never had a stake in this country. But redistribution would finally give people the stake in this thing, and might be the only way this thing can move ahead. I said it was finally, but I should amend this with one final point. When Stacey Abrams had the governorship of Georgia stolen from her by open white supremacists who was running the election, she was going to rural counties in Georgia and telling these white people with no health care, look, if we just get the federal stipend for every, she asked them, look, if you saying, look, if you give $1, you get 9 back. Wouldn't you do that?
Yes.
And then they got to pick between their whiteness and their life. That's right. Ooh. Reparations isn't a black conversation. Reparations may be the only way this country has a chance to become something other than what it has been.
We've got 2 more questions on the floor, but one of the things that I want to make sure that we understand when you talk about accountability. Mark and I talk about this all the time. It's accountability to elected officials who also look exactly like you.
That's exactly right.
We tend to kind of give them a pass. We can no longer give them a pass. This is a different game we're playing right now.
That's
This is a different game than we've ever looked at. Yes, sir.
I simply want to say, Reverend Mark and Dr. Greg, thank you.
Appreciate you.
We really appreciate you. And without consulting with Ron, I invite you back next year to have an expanded conversation about how we might best maximize our economic power for the liberation of our people.
We don't need Ron's
thank you so much.
But let me say this. We want to surround this conversation with a bunch of young people. And I will definitely come back to sit and listen to the plan that's developed between this year and next year as you all tell us exactly how reparations can work. And then we surround y'all with a bunch of teenagers and 20-somethings that are going to come work with y'all to make that plan a reality. I'm glad to do that.
If America and its economy really realize the potential, you know, in a dying capitalist system. A few years ago, a gentleman by the name Brian Sykes, he was a chief geneticist at Oxford. He came here and wrote a book called DNA USA, where he took a couple of years and studied, because everybody's into DNA and ancestry, studied American DNA. And what he found was over a third of whites in the South have some African DNA. Whites in the Northeast, not so much so. So we know what's going on in the South. I'm saying that to say, if we start talking about who gets reparations and individual payments, right? Even some of these folk running behind Trump, when they see what's him say, oh, you know, I got some black in me too. That's right.
Right.
Nobody's going to be loyal to anybody, especially this racist system we have here. So, you know, this is something that has to go forward. Yes.
All right, last question from the floor. And we should note that we've just seen a coup. Ron, I'm going to work with you to get back in charge, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was very informative. As we move forward as a people, Africa is going through, you said something, you said colonialism and enslavement. It's the same.
That's right.
It's the same thing. Some African leaders have started going this direction. It's not reparation, but some of them taking their lands back and everything else.
Yeah.
They end up getting sanctioned.
Of course.
In a way where it depletes them completely. So probably a suggestion, getting on the African Union level, because Ambassador Quick has been very vocal. I am afraid for her life, because I keep telling her, I said it's a chess game.
Yes.
They always go after the king, and right now she's the king. And they will use the pawns to get to the king.
Right.
So you guys have like the knight, the bishops, and everything is on the chess game.
We're all on the board.
She needs the protection.
Yes,
So
yes,
probably working with her from the African Union to also discuss this conversation with the African leaders that are being sanctioned would definitely help all of us be able to stay ground and go after what is actually ours.
Agreed. I know we're right up against the clock. I just want to mention, in concert, what you said earlier as well. Thank you for the comments earlier. The African Union is a fascinating moment. We know the Pan-Africanist movement that comes out of the 60s with the Organization of African Unity. We also know that the Western powers never want one of those African states to go rogue. So I don't know that if you're a part of the country, do you have that diplomatic passport that allows you to just go anywhere with a visa from country to country? That's a beautiful thing. I think Nigeria was the last one to sign on. Of course, without Nigeria, ain't nothing gonna happen. Right? No, but what I'm saying is that this is the thing that is frightening the world system. And we haven't even mentioned China, so which we probably should, that Belt and Road Initiative. In other words, Africa is not only the future of Africa, Africa is the future of the world. And so that sixth region is very important because think about the fact anybody in here can be able to get a passport. If you can get a passport in one African country, with this, you can travel anywhere. That's Nkrumah. That's Ezekiel. That's, and so they're going to fight that by any means necessary because that flies in the face of finance capital. Last thing I said, it's time to go. This reparations conversation, as you said, Mark, reparations in the United States, if it's redistribution, is going to help everybody.
That's right.
But that leaves the one thing that we don't talk about much, and this goes back to the emotional thing you raised. This is the trauma of what happened to our people.
That's right.
There is a specific reparations claim we have that is based on the idea that they try to dehumanize us. 20 years ago, out of Ghana came the photographer movement. I remember when they came here and said, we're going to apologize for anything we did to each other that led in y'all being over here on this boat and came here. That's the thing, it's almost unspeakable. That's why slavery and colonialism is so difficult for us to talk about, because ultimately, that's the thing we have to deal with, and that's only us can deal with that. And it's unspeakable, but I don't know how we deal with it, but until we deal with it, we're always going to be subject to other people.
Real quick, I know we're out of time. Just a couple of historical points. Speaking of the last panel and African Union, this is the centennial of the first Pan-African Congress. That Dr. W. Du Bois convened in 1919. That was in 1919, so we need to pick up from that.
That's right.
Also, as I said, we'll be, meeting with the African Union. Also, on a historical point, he mentioned Callie House, also from Nashville, like Greg and myself. Good things come from Nashville. Like
woo, 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 woo.
Queen Mother Moore. He mentioned Negro Leagues. This is not too well known. Before Branch Rickey did what he did, Queen Mother Moore was also on a committee dealing with integration of the major leagues. That was a big deal. Wow. But you know what Queen Mother Moore's argument was? Not for individuals to join Major League Baseball teams, but to bring the existing Negro League teams, black businesses into the major leagues. That's what was on the table. And lastly, in closing, just a reminder, social media, yourselves, and encourage others. When you hear folks saying reparations or don't vote, don't deal with it, shut it down, don't participate in it. When you hear people knocking everything we talked about in terms of Pan-Africanism, knock that down too, don't deal with it. We know what we have to do. And again, we invite people to go to ibw21.org and see the 10-point program of the National African American Reparations Commission and make suggestions and get involved, and let's stay together. Madasi, sister, for your comment.
Please say thank you to this panel. We should note that the statement